Russia reports new strikes on Ukrainian industrial, logistics, and railway targets, while Ukraine highlights shortages of Patriot interceptor missiles and advances its own ballistic missile program. Jared Kushner meets Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem as the Gaza roadmap remains blocked by disagreements over Hamas disarmament and Israeli withdrawal. The US-Iran confrontation intensifies around the Strait of Hormuz as Oman continues mediation and regional drone tensions spread into Iraqi Kurdistan. An American missionary is freed after 10 months in captivity following his abduction in Niger and transfer into Mali. Latvia strengthens security along its border with Belarus after the discovery of a tunnel beneath the frontier. Moscow summons Japan's ambassador as the dispute over Putin's visit to Iturup triggers a new diplomatic confrontation over the Kuril Islands. And in Leaders on X, Emmanuel Macron outlines France's military buildup, Masroor Barzani accuses Iran of drone attacks, and Lee Jae-myung calls for stronger South Korean wartime readiness. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, Russian-linked sources reported drone strikes on the industrial zone in Kamyanska. They identified the Spetstekosnaska enterprise as one target and also reported fires at the Yuzhkovsk coke plant. Footage from the area showed large fires overnight, although the full extent of the damage remains unclear. In Brovary, in the Kyiv region, jet-powered drones were reported over the city. Later images showed emergency crews working around a heavily damaged distribution center. The precise role of the facility has not been independently confirmed. Russian sources also published footage they say shows Iran drones striking railway infrastructure near Shakhtarsky in the Dnipropetrovsk region. 2 locomotives with freight cars were reportedly hit, although the extent of the damage remains unclear. Another strike was reported in Pechenihi in the Kharkiv region. Russian sources claimed 2 Banderol cruise missiles struck an area where vehicles had been concentrated. The exact nature of the target has not been independently confirmed. Russian military-linked sources also reported glide bomb strikes against Ukrainian UAV infrastructure. 1 FAB-3000 was reportedly used against a drone command point in the Kherson area, while 5 FAB-500 bombs were claimed to have struck another UAV command site near Mykhailivsky in the Sumy region. On the ground, Russia's defense ministry says its forces took Krasnopodolye and Orekhovatka. Those claims have not been independently confirmed. CNN footage reportedly showed Patriot launchers near Kyiv standing empty, with Ukrainian personnel pointing to a shortage of interceptor missiles. Mikhailo Fedorov says a Ukrainian ballistic missile could be capable of striking Russia within 3 to 6 months. He also says future warfare will increasingly rely on autonomous drones and robotic systems. Russia is also adapting its air defense network. A Russian television report showed what it described as a new ring of 35-meter towers around Moscow equipped with Pantsir systems, including smaller TKB-1055 Gvozd missiles for drone interception. In Kyiv, protesters also gathered outside the Verkhovna Rada amid a dispute over changes at the defense ministry. Demonstrators opposed the proposed appointment of a new defense minister and called on lawmakers not to approve major personnel changes without broader discussion. A new attempt to move the Gaza agreement forward has ended without a final breakthrough. Jared Kushner held a lengthy meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem after previously meeting Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya in Cairo. The talks focused on a U.S.-backed roadmap designed to move the ceasefire into its next phase. The central issue remains Hamas disarmament. Hamas has accepted the broader proposal in principle, while Israel insists that the group must give up its weapons before reconstruction can begin. Netanyahu has also resisted withdrawing Israeli forces from areas of Gaza before that process is completed. The American plan is built around a sequence of security and political steps. Hamas would decommission its military infrastructure and transfer governing authority to a Palestinian technocratic administration. Israeli forces would withdraw as the security arrangements are implemented, while international supervision would support the transition and eventual reconstruction, but the sequencing remains unresolved. Hamas wants Israeli withdrawal to move forward alongside disarmament, while Netanyahu wants verified demilitarization first. That disagreement has become the main obstacle preventing the roadmap from moving into implementation. Kushner says progress on removing weapons could begin within roughly a month. He also made clear that Washington does not intend to support reconstruction while Hamas retains military capabilities. 2 working groups are now expected to focus on disarmament and other implementation issues. A major complication is appears that both sides are still interpreting the roadmap differently. Israeli officials want the security phase completed before political and economic steps begin, while Hamas is seeking guarantees that withdrawal and reconstruction will not be postponed indefinitely. That means even an agreement on disarmament would not automatically resolve the wider dispute. The coming negotiations will have to define who verifies compliance, how quickly Israeli forces pull back, and which authority takes responsibility for security and administration once Hamas gives up control. For now, the Jerusalem talks have produced cautious optimism, but no Israeli commitment to the full plan. The next test is whether the sides can agree on a timetable linking Hamas disarmament, Israeli withdrawal, and reconstruction. Without agreement on that sequence, the Gaza process remains stalled despite the latest round of direct diplomacy. The US-Iran confrontation is entering another dangerous phase after the latest diplomatic window closed without an agreement. President Donald Trump has again called on Tehran to surrender, while Iranian officials say the country is moving toward a more offensive posture. The Strait of Hormuz remains at the center of the dispute. Iran says talks with Oman are advancing on commercial navigation, while Washington demands unrestricted passage before easing pressure on Iranian ports. Trump has escalated his rhetoric toward Oman, threatening military action if Muscat interferes with U.S. objectives against Iran. That complicates Oman's role as a key intermediary. At the same time, Sultan Haitham bin Tariq met UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi to discuss regional security. Trump says Washington has channels into Iran, while Tehran denies direct contacts with the Revolutionary Guard. Pressure is also spreading beyond Hormuz. Kurdish officials in northern Iraq say drones struck political and security targets, including Kurdistan Regional Government Prime Minister Masroor Barzani. Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi condemned the attack but rejected the implication that Tehran was behind it. In a post on X, he warned of attempts to create friction between Iran and Kurdish authorities and recalled Iran's past support for Kurdish communities against Saddam Hussein and ISIS. Another overnight incident was reported in Tasluja, where footage showed a large fire at a fuel storage site after a reported drone strike. The claim that the drone was Iranian has not been independently confirmed. The next test is whether Oman can turn its talks with Iran into a workable shipping arrangement before the confrontation expands further. American missionary and pilot Kevin Rideout has been freed after about 10 months in captivity following his abduction in Niger. Rideout was seized near his home in Niamey and later taken into Mali. His case remained largely out of public view for months, but a new video released by forces aligned with Eastern Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar shows him alive and thanking those involved in securing his release. Haftar's forces say their special units carried out an operation in Mali and brought Rideout to safety. In the video, he specifically thanks Saddam Haftar and the Libyan National Army. The appearance in Libya has drawn attention because the original kidnapping happened hundreds of kilometers away in West Africa, but the circumstances remain disputed. Reuters cited several sources saying negotiations with the kidnappers played a central role, while one source said a ransom was paid. Haftar's forces have not publicly acknowledged that version. The case also highlights how hostage networks in the Sahel can cross national borders, linking Niger, Mali, and Libya in a single security episode. It also raises questions about the role regional armed groups and intermediaries can play in resolving hostage cases outside formal state channels. The next question is whether more details emerge on who held Rideout, how the talks were conducted, and whether his release resulted from a military operation, a negotiated deal, or a combination of both. Latvia is strengthening security along its border with Belarus after authorities discovered a tunnel crossing beneath the frontier. President Edgars Rinkēvičs visited the area to inspect barriers, surveillance systems, and other defensive measures. Border officials say the tunnel appears to have been used only once, but the discovery has renewed concern over illegal crossings and possible attempts to test Latvia's border security. Riga is also watching for signs that migration pressure could increase ahead of the October election. Latvian officials have repeatedly accused Belarus of using migration as a tool of pressure, while Minsk denies organizing such activity. During the visit, Rinkēvičs reviewed cameras, sensors, and physical obstacles and said Latvia must be ready for different scenarios. The government is continuing work on strengthening the eastern border as part of a broader effort to improve national resilience and protect NATO's external frontier. At the same time, Latvian authorities say they currently see no signs of a major military buildup on the Belarusian side. The immediate concern is border security and hybrid pressure rather than evidence of an imminent conventional threat. Officials also say the border infrastructure is being adapted to respond faster to sudden incidents, allowing patrols and security units to reinforce vulnerable sectors with less warning. The next step is to expand surveillance and close remaining gaps along the frontier while monitoring whether pressure increases in the coming weeks. Moscow has summoned Japan's ambassador as the dispute over the Kuril Islands continues to escalate. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Tokyo's objections to President Vladimir Putin's visit to Iturup were unacceptable, while Moscow insists the southern Kurils are Russian territory and not subject to negotiation. Japan strongly protested Putin's visit and reiterated its claim to the 4 southern islands known in Japan as the Northern Territories. Tokyo says the trip contradicts its long-standing position on sovereignty over the territory. The dispute has prevented Russia and Japan from signing a formal peace treaty since the end of the Second World War. Relations have deteriorated further since Japan joined Western sanctions against Moscow over Ukraine. The islands also carry strategic importance because they sit between Russia's Pacific coast and northern Japan, placing the dispute within the wider security balance in Northeast Asia. The latest exchange marks another diplomatic escalation between the two countries, with neither side showing signs of changing its position on the islands. French President Emmanuel Macron says France is entering the next stage of its military buildup. He says the new military programming law will be promulgated tomorrow and that France will have doubled its armed forces budget, with another 36 billion euros in investment planned between 2026 and 2030. In Iraqi Kurdistan, Prime Minister Masroor Barzani says his personal office and the residence of the head of the Kurdistan region's security service were targeted in Iranian drone attacks. He described the incidents as a dangerous escalation and a direct threat to the security and stability of the region. Barzani's statement directly attributes responsibility to Iran at a time of growing tensions between Tehran and Kurdish authorities in northern Iraq. And South Korean President Lee Jae-myung used the Ulchi national security exercises to emphasize wartime readiness. He says the drills are defensive but warned that peace requires preparation for the worst-case scenario. Lee called for more realistic and full-scale exercises reflecting the changing nature of modern warfare and said South Korea will continue strengthening its national security capabilities.